Zetesk rants here, showcasing my ignorance yet again. How does an economy work? You provide service to Company 1 that pays you money to extract raw resources. Company 1 gets its money by charging Company 2 more than is necessary for the labor of the workers from Company 1, also known as profit. Company 2 gets its money by transporting those raw resources to Company 3 at a higher price than the cost to extract and transport those raw resources. Company 3 gets its money by selling manufactured goods to consumers like you for more than the combined cost of labor and materials necessary to create the manufactured goods. Company 1 pays you $1 to extract the resources, then sells the resources to Company 2 for $2, $1 of profit for Company 1. Company 2 pays the driver $1 to transport the resources, and charges Company 3 for, again $1 of profit. Company 3 pays the manufacturing laborer $1 to turn the resources into consumer products, then sells the consumer products for $6 to someone, $1 of profit for Company 3. None of the laborers in that picture can afford to buy the product, since they each only have $1 and the product costs $6. How would any of the laborers get enough money to buy the consumer product? If the answer is saving over time, then there will always be more unsold products than there are sold products, and Company 3 will go out of business, followed by Company 2. Even if the companies abandon profit, the final good still costs at least $3 and each laborer only gets $1. In that situation, once each person does their job 3 times, 3 products are made and all 3 of them can afford to buy one each. Introduce any profit, tax, theft, or damage during transit manufacturing, and then we face the issue where people can't buy the product anymore. Economics is tough. In mathematics, a system of equations can loop infinitely if the equations are all balanced so that there is no net gain or net loss to the system. If not for inflation, this would be a good way to model economics. Perhaps thinking in discrete measurements is the issue. If we treat economic transactions as a continuous flow, a function, or fluid dynamics, then maybe it will make sense. A bunch of people buy products from retail companies. The retail companies predict the demand for their products and purchase the necessary supply from the manufacturing companies. The manufacturing companies do likewise, but with the retail companies being their customers and the raw resource extraction companies being their suppliers. The resource companies only have the cost of labor and equipment, not materials, to off-balance before they make a profit, so they can afford to charge less. The consumers end up paying more than the cost of materials and labor because they are paying for the convenience and time savings. As long as they spend less than they earn, they remain debt-free. If a consumer does the resource extraction and manufacturing process themselves, they lose a certain amount of time that could have otherwise been spent earning money. If the lost earnings are larger than the price of the finished product, then it would be better for the consumer to spend their time working and purchase the product. Since it takes several weeks to grow wheat, and lots of equipment to turn wheat into bread, it is always a better economic decision to buy bread than it is to grow your own. Since tomatoes and apples can be eaten with almost no effort after planting, it is a good economic decision for everyone to grow their own, assuming they have the space and do not have insects, animals that will destroy their crops, and assuming they want to eat those foods. The idea of a minimum wage is that the government can accurately predict the cost of food, clothing, essential hygiene products, housing, utilities, etc., basic needs aka cost of living, and we as a society have agreed that working 40 hours per week, regardless of how easy the job is to do, should pay enough to cover those costs throughout the year, including extra heating costs in the winter due to snow. The government has a list of all the items that are considered basic needs, human essentials, and has historical data to be able to predict the cost of each of these things on a year-to-year basis. A quick addition gives them the take-home pay required for minimum wage. The government also has control over the payroll taxes and deductions, so a quick calculation can give them the gross annual pay for minimum wage. That number, divided by 52 gives weekly pay, and that divided by 40 gives hourly wage. As such, if the government predicts the cost of living is going up, it should preemptively raise the minimum wage because it knows that people who rely on minimum wage do not have any savings left over, and cannot afford to wait a year for their wages to catch up to the cost of living. A responsible government would adjust this minimum wage based on geographic locations, because it would know that cost of living is severely impacted by location. Ideally, this minimum wage would assume that each person living on minimum wage was living with one dependent child. This would allow for people without children to earn up enough savings to potentially break away from the cycle of being stuck at minimum wage, through investing or through advanced education. This would also discourage single parents from having more children, if they were on minimum wage. This would also allow couples who are both at minimum wage with a single child to raise that child with enough money going into their savings to allow the family a small safety net in case of unexpected expenses, or a second child. The question becomes, is such a minimum wage sustainable in the long term? If it is, then it requires that the price for education is low enough so that it does not take more than a decade of minimum wage with no child to earn enough for an education that grants a job paying more than minimum wage. If this is sustainable, it also requires that the rate of change of minimum wage remains stable or constant. Exponential growth of the cost of living would render the minimum wage a death sentence, as all opportunity for saving or advancement would be lost forever. If there is no way to make the minimum wage sustainable long term, then perhaps a better solution is to. I was going to say something like outlaw dead-end jobs that also pay minimum wage, but corporations would just fire the people before they got eligible for a promotion, or would pay them slightly higher than minimum wage so the rules wouldn't apply. Economics is tough. The basic concept is that people working full-time shouldn't be in poverty. But knowing that corporations are greedy and without conscience, it is very difficult to make a solution work. Maybe someone smarter than me understands economics, or maybe it is like quantum physics where people who claim to understand it know less than people who claim they don't. Like and subscribe.